In this movie, I want to jump into a whole new section of working in Workstation with VMware virtual machines, and that is the realm of virtual machine networking. Now, virtual machines in VMware support standard networking functionalities, but again, it's inside this virtual environment. So as a result, there's a number of virtual networking components that you need to be aware of. And it's actually harder to think of these in a virtual environment than it is to understand what they are, because we've already been using these things. The first thing that you need to become aware of is virtual switches, then virtual network adapters, then a virtual DHCP server, and then a NAT device. Now what's cool about these things, you don't actually set up any of these. They just kind of happen for you. You can certainly go in and set some of them up and make changes to them later. We'll talk about that. But for the most part, this just happens. But you do need to understand the terminology here. So first of all, let's talk about a virtual switch. It's also known as a virtual network, and you really need to picture, like a 16 port or 24 port or whatever switch with all the little ports there that you plug your Cat5 or Cat6 cable into, and that is what's actually out there in a virtual environment. This is used to basically connect network components together, to plug our virtual Cat5 into, if you will. Now, Workstation provides 3 virtual network switches. The first one is just a regular old bridged switch. It connects you to the outside world, and this one has a name, and it's called VMnet 0. Now, if you're working in a Linux host environment, the name is the same, but it's all lowercase, the same for all of these. The second type of network switch that's provided for you virtually is a NAT, Network Address Translation, and the name of that one in VMware parlance is VMnet 8, and then there's host only VMnet 1. And so let's dig into each of these just a little bit more as we move through this video. Now understand, Workstation creates these switches as they're needed based on how you set up your virtual machines. Now you can have up to 10 of these virtual network switches on a Windows host system and up to 255 on Linux host systems. I doubt you need 255, but hey, you never know. Now a virtual network adapter is the same thing as a real-world network adapter. It is what we assign IP addresses to. It is what more or less makes the physical connection between our virtual machine out to another virtual machine, really out to the virtual switch, and then out to the outside world to another virtual machine, and so forth. Now this is created automatically for you when you use the new virtual machine wizard, and your virtual network adapter, or the VNA, appears in the guest operating system always as either an AMD PCNet PCI adapter or an Intel Pro 1000 MT server adapter. And what's interesting here is if you're on Windows 7 or Vista, it's always going to be Intel Pro 1000 MT server adapter. So if I were to go out into Workstation, open up my Vista virtual machine, and go look at the network and go out there and look at the adapter card that machine thinks it has, it thinks it's running an Intel Pro 1000 MT server adapter, and it's got an IP address assigned to it. Now, the virtual DHCP server, this will mess with control freaks. This just kind of shows up automatically, and it provides IP addresses to virtual machines when the virtual machines are not bridged to an external network. In other words, we've told the machines that I don't want you to talk to the outside world, I just want you to communicate with yourself, with the host, and maybe with other virtual machines. Well, this is also called a host-only configuration. NAT configuration also uses this DHCP server scenario because whether we're host-only or we're using network address translation, our virtual machine needs its own unique IP address. And so the DHCP server takes care of that. Now a NAT device, this is a switch that sits there just like a NAT device would in the real world, and it passes network data between one or more virtual machines and the external network. So let's say I've got 3 virtual machines running, and I want to use NAT to connect those to the outside world, to the internet. And so the NAT device shows up automatically when I start to set this up, and it basically works like any standard NAT does. It checks the ID of incoming packets, and it directs them to the correct virtual machine based on the information it sees in the packet. So that's the basis of networking in the virtual machine environment in Workstation. This nothing different from the outside world. Once you kind of get your head around this and get comfortable with it, you can do some real neat things here as far as networking, testing networking situations, testing network failures among your client, your server, and all that sort of thing. So you can actually build these environments as long as you have enough RAM in your host system. You can have 2 or 3 clients, 2 or 3 servers, and then you can start to troubleshoot broken network links, slow network links, all that sort of thing. So anyway, that's the basis for understanding networking in the virtual environment.